Welcome to the 11 Days of Global Unity Summit and celebrating the 20th anniversary of 11 Days of Global Unity. My name is Jana Larsen, and I am the Deputy Director and the HR Administrator of We the World. For the full 11 days schedule, you can register for free by going to we.net, and you can see replays of the recordings. You can also make a contribution to support We the World by going to we.net, and we thank you. Today, we have Thato and her guests discussing empowering women. Welcome, Thato, and your guests.
Thank you, Jana, and greetings to everybody. On today's session, Empowering Women, Advancing Gender Equity and Inclusion in Underrepresented Communities, we will be exploring strategies for advancing gender equity and inclusion in underrepresented communities by highlighting grassroots efforts, successful campaigns, and innovative projects led by women in the fields of climate justice, social justice, and community development. We have amazing speakers and powerful speakers that I'm so proud to know, and I'm dealing with Joy today. We have Joyce Koech, who is a climate justice activist and mangrove conservationalist dedicated to conserving nature through mangrove restoration. She's passionate about educating women and girls to become agents of change in the climate space. Welcome, Joy. We have Lazola Kati, who holds a bachelor's degree in social sciences, triple majoring in political and international relations and sociology. She also holds a postgraduate diploma in international relations, an experienced specialist and practitioner in the field of social justice and human rights campaigns with over 6 years in project management, campaigns, an expert in designing, raising awareness, and implementing campaigns. She has collaborated with embassies in South Africa, Germany, China, all with a key focus of raising awareness on campaigns. As a researcher, critical thinker, and creative thinker, she has produced impressive work in the final report of the Anti-Disinformation Project. This project aimed to eradicate disinformation in South Africa during elections and was a collaborative effort between former Member of Parliament Phumzile Van Dam and Africa Check, and among others. She was also part of the team that ran the Oceans Not Oil campaign on change.org that generated over 100,000 signatures on the platform and stopped Shell, the international company, from continuing any oceans exploration in South Africa in the province of Eastern Cape. She has done so much work, and as we lead Impact Global Mentor and one of the 2024 Royal African Youth Leadership Awardee, we are so pleased to have you, Lazola. Then we also have Clariss Masiya, who is a gender equality and social inclusion expert who is passionate about climate justice and sustainable community development. She is currently working as a program officer, gender equity and social inclusion for Green Governance Zimbabwe Trust. In her role, she is responsible for guiding the organization and applying principles of gender equality and social inclusion in all operational practices, and ensuring that there are gender responsive approaches to climate action, providing an entry point for addressing gender equalities. She's also interested in writing and has published articles, opinion pieces, and short stories. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Peace and Governance from Bindura University of Science Education and is currently studying for a Master's in Disaster Management. Moving on to our session today, ladies, I will give the floor to Joy to share a personal narrative that highlights her work in mangrove conservation, particularly in the context of climate change, where she will explain how her work involves and empowers women and girls providing specific examples of educational initiatives or community involvement, highlighting the challenges she's faced in promoting gender equity in environmental conservation and how she is doing amazing work to address those challenges. The floor is yours, John.
Wow, thank you so much, Thato. Thank you also the rest of the team for giving me this opportunity to be able to speak of the work that I do and of the amazing work that the women that I get involved with and myself are doing. So I founded an organization called Blue Earth Organization, which is based in Mombasa, Kenya. And what we do is that we are in the mangrove restoration. We started this project because we noticed that our oceans were being, of course, was first being polluted by plastic. There was a lot of plastic pollution, and there wasn't a lot of awareness in it. And then later on, we felt that we as women had you see, like, women are the ones that are affected when our environment is destroyed, like when there's pollution, when there's any form of disruption in our environment. We are the first people to feel its effects. So with this reason, we started doing cleanups. We started doing environmental awareness and the effects of plastic pollution. But of course, we wanted to do more. And so we investigated on what else we could do, what else we could contribute to our society, and also being also in the climate space. We were like, what else can we do apart from creating awareness about climate change? What else? What kind of actions could we get ourselves involved in? And that is when we came up with this campaign of restoring mangroves, and we called it. In Kiswahili, we gave it a title, called Mikoko Yetu or Hai Wetu, which basically means that our mangroves are our lifeline. And that is what I'm going to delve in and discuss about the importance of mangroves in our ecology and the importance of mangroves in the fight against climate change. Now, mangroves are a very special ecosystem that only grows in salty water. They are very unique because of how they grow, of the way it looks. They have very interesting roots. They have roots that just go this way, and they're a powerful ecosystem, especially in biodiversity. They hold a lot of biodiversity, such as fish, such as crabs, and they're a hotspot for biodiversity. And so looking at this ecosystem and how powerful it was, and how, as much as it was powerful, we also realized that this ecosystem was also being destroyed. To make way for agriculture, to make way for infrastructure development. And so looking at how powerful this ecosystem is, we decided to go into it and to start restoring. And we went into this campaign and we made sure that we involve as much young people as possible, because we believe that like, people are really great agents of change, especially when it comes to talking about climate change. And in the process of restoring these wonderful mangroves, we have interacted with like almost 500 community members. We have done education, we have empowered them, we have educated them on the importance of this ecosystem. But in turn, we see that these same community members, the same women that we have been working with, have a lot of knowledge when it comes to this ecosystem. So like, it was really powerful for us to just integrate the knowledge that they had into now continue to restoring this ecosystem. So over the last 4 years, because we've been working on this project since 2021, we have been able to plant over 40,000 mangrove seedlings. And in the process of doing that, a lot of communities have been empowered, especially when it comes to also the livelihoods, because most of the communities that we work with are fishermen and also fisherwomen who depend on mangroves as their source of livelihood. So what we did was to just make sure that the ecosystem is thriving so that the community can also thrive. And in that process, we have brought back diversity because it is essential for these communities to thrive in a healthy ecosystem. We have engaged young people, and I think one of the things that we really emphasize is that we need to connect back with nature. We need to bring young people to know that we are part of nature and not outside of nature. And I think that is the one thing that we are missing with of course dealing with indigenous people. They teach you that we are not separate from nature. So I think that that's one of the things that we are really rallying about, into bringing young people. We have brought school children, we have brought young people as well to just come to this ecosystem. And it's all fun. We are planting mangroves, but you're doing such a huge impact. But at the same time, you are reconnecting people with nature. You are showing them how to align back with nature. So that is what we've been doing. And of course, we have had impact planting almost 40,000 seedlings, as I said. But of course, we are also taking action, especially in reducing emissions, because this powerful ecosystem, the mangrove ecosystem, takes in 10 times to 5 times to 10 times more carbon from the atmosphere than the normal terrestrial forest. So it's a really powerful ecosystem, and this is an ecosystem that in the coast, because you realize that in the coast of Kenya, we do not have a lot of terrestrial forests. We only have mangroves, and these same mangroves are being degraded. So it is one of the only systems that we can use to fight emissions, and that is one of the things that I have been really pushing on as a climate activist. That we push into the protection of this ecosystem and make sure that we are using nature-based solutions as a form of our fight with climate change. But of course, being in this and one thing that we have been pushing also is just the involvement of women, and we've seen how they're such powerful agents, especially when it comes. One thing that we've been doing is that involving women in these practices, because I come from a community where, of course, it does not want women to be exposed in such activities, that women should be staying at home, women should be providing for families. But you will realize that some of these women are single mothers, single women, and they need to have an income. When I discuss about such activities, because I am very much connected with you see, with mangroves comes an economic activity, which is of course fishing. And one thing that we forget is that also women are fisher women. So that aspect also, a lot of people forget that also women go out there, women fish, and they are part of of the fishing community. We're not only talking about fishermen, we're also talking about fisherwomen, because women are also depending on such activities for their livelihood. So just to empower women, and of course it comes with a lot of challenges, but I realized that one of the ways to achieve gender equality is, of course, to give these women an opportunity and a space, because we live in an area where this economic activity is very much dominated by men. So we push for policies. We push for women to come and be part of the activity. So right now so what we've done is that we have been able to connect women with hotel, because hotel industries, because most of the fish that they get over there are prawns. So we push these women to these places that make sure that they are having also these opportunities where they can present their work, they can present and their businesses as well, such as, for example, in marketing, in post-harvesting, such as when they pack and process. So all those education, making sure that they get the benefits from fishing, of course, apart from men, and also trying to also, of course, and all this is beneficial because we are trying to fight this patriarchy that men can only benefit from such. Another thing that we are also pushing in is that the importance of women in biodiversity conservation, which of course I am really, well, it's one of the things that I am personally pushing, because biodiversity is really important, because without biodiversity, then our planet is dead. So just the importance and the recognition that women are powerful agents in biodiversity conservation, that they are also very much essential. They have a lot of knowledge when it comes to biodiversity conservation. They have a lot of knowledge to provide in conversation that deal with biodiversity. And even right now, as we move to COP16, to discuss about biodiversity, we need to have women at the table, and making sure that women's contribution, women's ideas, especially indigenous women that I work with, are integrated, and making sure that women are having at the seat of the table, because climate change, climate disasters affect women the most, but also they're also very powerful agents if they're given opportunity and the space to to the opportunity and the space to be in these spaces. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Joy. Wonderfully said. I think there's a saying that women are connected with nature. As in, like, a woman always knows, as we are naturals, and we are the human form of Mother Earth. And I love how you also shared, even with the embodiment of the mangrove, how it has become a carbon sink, which turns toxicity into a safe and clean environment, which is more what women do. And I love how you are empowering them as well, and making sure that they take up space, and they're afforded these opportunities, and that they also understand that they shouldn't just take the back seat because of certain cultural norms, societal norms, and injustices. So it's beautifully said. Thank you very much. We'll be moving on to Lazola, who will be contextualizing gender equity with within broader social justice and human rights frameworks by providing an analysis of how political and international relations intersect with gender issues, particularly in underrepresented communities. She will also discuss the role of advocacy and policy change in promoting gender equity, including challenges faced in different social political contexts. Over to you, Lazo.
Thank you so much, Thato. I don't know if I'm going to do all of that within this one section. We need a whole summit on that, but I will do my best. Um, thank you so much to Joy. You're doing such amazing work, very inspiring work, and work that needs to be absolutely everywhere, all over the continent. So in terms of the topic that I'll be speaking on, I'll just touch a little bit on a couple of things, hoping that it will bring in some conversation. So, in terms of gender equity is increasingly recognized as a fundamental aspect of human rights, essential for achieving social justice and equality. We've seen this in different movements, whole movements, and organizations and companies being founded specifically with a human rights perspective, framework, and lens. We've seen a very big shift, even from international, or rather, let me say, international relations sort of institutions like your UN that have shifted, and different institutions like the EU that have shifted from border security all the way to a paradigm shift to human security. So those kinds of shifts do show us that there is a need for human rights framework, and more essentially to create equity within those different frameworks. The integration of gender and equity into the human rights framework emphasizes that all individuals need to be recognized, they need equal rights. One of the bigger aspects that has come out of this shift that we've seen over the years has been a lot of women's organizations, a lot of organizations in general calling for equity towards equality. And this is a very important conversation, specifically because we can call for equity, but in our call for equity, we need to understand that there is redressing that needs to be done, that there is a gap between women and men, there is a gap between representation of women in international institutions and in political institutions, nationally and globally. And so when we embark on a human rights framework, it needs to be cognizant of the fact that we need to look at equity. We need to create equality using equity mechanisms. And some of those mechanisms have come up in the global context, specifically with different agreements that have come into play, like international treaties and conventions. Just to name a few, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, which was adopted in 1979. Sadly, a lot of these, I must mention, treaties and conventions are from decades ago. And this is, again, one of the things that we need to highlight as women and people operating in the space of equity, is that there needs to be updated updated treaties and conventions and agreements that actually address the equity aspect of the equality that we're needing. Another such of these treaties is the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, which is basically its agenda, is basically achieving gender equality and empowering women. It emphasizes women's rights as human rights, which means it emphasizes them as fundamental rights. And it's very important because in a lot of movements that we are seeing within the African and global North perspective, women are now saying that it's not just women's rights, it's a fundamental right. Women need to be treated like human beings, equal to men. And the most important thing is for us to understand, or rather have an intersectional understanding of the woman in and of herself, and the presence and the importance of the woman in and of herself. I was listening to what Joy was saying, and the importance of including women in policy making mechanisms, in actual participation in activities when it comes to climate change, biodiversity. And one of the reasons is that 1 in every 4 women, specifically in Africa, 1 in every 4 households is headed by women. And this is very predominant in the Southern African perspective more than the Western African. But those kind of statistics really do emphasize the need for there to be more treaties, more conventions that bring women to the forefront, that bring women in decision-making sort of platforms and roles. The last, one of the last, this is not just the last one in general, but this is the last convention I will mention, is the Protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights on the Rights of Women in Africa. And this is very important because literature has shown us, and I think as women that live in Africa, we've seen that Africa is highly patriarchal. The cultural norms, the religious norms that were introduced to Africa are very patriarchal, and they put women in the back. They put women in the receiving end, and such sort of protocols then also then try to address those types of issues. They try and address and bring women to the forefront. And it's also good that to date, 43 African states have signed the protocol, and 41 ratified it. So these are the types of mechanisms that we need to look at, and create more, but also more importantly, is to create monitoring and evaluation systems. Because we do have these conventions, and this is in the context of international relations. But then again, I think for me, I'll speak for myself. I'm South African. I'm in South Africa. I'm a woman. But a lot of these protocols you hear about in academic and theoretical spaces, you don't necessarily feel it for yourself. There isn't a lot of inclusion of women in these spaces to ensure that country-wise, regionally, these things are actually impacted on, they're actually implemented. So monitoring and evaluation sort of programs and implementations are very important to ensure that these global aspects and agreements are recognized and are seen by everyday women in their everyday lives. Another aspect of rooting ourselves, or rather looking at the framework and equity that we've seen, and I'll say maybe nationally we've seen this, is the national legislation and policy changes that we've seen over the years, legal reforms that we've seen over the years. Many countries have enacted laws to promote gender equity, such as equal pay legislation, laws against gender-based violence, and policies that support women's health and reproductive rights, bringing the education to the fund, capacity building, and funding. And in as much as we are still growing in terms of bringing all of these aspects, but there have been sort of changes, policy changes, and national legislation. A good example is the Violence Against Women Act that's in the United States, provided crucial protections and resources for survivors of domestic violence. And this is specifically within the paradigm of policies and support on women's health and reproductive rights, because we can speak of policy changes in terms of representing women in decision-making platforms. But what we also need to address simultaneously is laws that actually address the issues that women face, your gender-based violence, femicide, patriarchal laws, and cultural norms. And we need to do this very sensitively as well, recognizing the pain that women go through in trying to get to an equal state. And this is where the highlighted tension of equity towards equality comes in. These types of laws are absolutely important, because we can't just say women go and be in charge, but we need to also address the issues that everyday women face. More legislative sort of changes that have come in are quotas, gender quotas, sorry. Various countries have implemented quotas to increase women's representation in political and decision-making roles. And this has been a very big paradigm shift in actually putting women in governments and putting women in parliament, putting them in actual decision-making roles that will not only impact women only, but create an equal playing field in terms of the human rights paradigm and in terms of the human rights framework. A very good example is Rwanda, actually, because they have actually achieved, it's the only national assembly to have achieved a majority female representation in parliament, and they actually introduced a mandatory 30% women representation in their parliament. And it's important. The word mandatory is important because a lot of countries have introduced your gender quotas as a suggestion rather than mandatory. And this is to say, a lot of countries do need to also look at qualifications. They need to look at who is ready to assume those roles. And if there is a gap, capacity building is absolutely important in rooting gender equity and gender equality within the human rights framework and decision-making roles of political and international parties. Some of the other ways that we have seen throughout history is, in fact, there is a call for this, more funding for women candidates that want to go into political parties, because there is very little funding that's actually specifically for women. And when we say for women, it means capacity building, it means financial support, it means actually training, because again, there needs to be that gap that needs to be addressed. In South Africa, for instance, there isn't a real law that is set in stone that is a quota for political parties to have a specific amount of women in their party. However, the dominating, or rather the ruling party, the ANC, for the past couple of years, who are now actually in a coalition government, do have a policy that aims to have 50% representation of women in its structures. And currently in South Africa, 46%, sorry, seats in National Assembly are basically belong to women, are held by women. However, this is in stark contrast to Rwanda, who currently has 63.7% that whose seats are in the National Assembly that are held by women. And now we can see the tension between a suggestion on basically having a mandatory quota or having a suggested quota. So those types of tensions are extremely important in that. Okay. Sorry about that. Just network issues on my side. Um, I'm still here. You can still hear me.
Yes, no, you're still audible. Your video
Right.
froze a bit, yeah, but we are still with you. Okay.
All right, thank you so much. I was just wrapping up the point on political representation and the importance of mandatory quotas versus suggested quotas, because we see this in South Africa. There is an implication, or rather there is a suggestion to let's have more women in leadership roles, but versus Rwanda, who has a mandatory quota of 30% representation. What is also important is that in as much as gender quotas have been introduced as a very revolutionary mechanism, these quotas are needing to be fine-tuned in that women sometimes are put in leadership roles as a ticker box mechanism, and this is movement language. But what women are increasingly calling for is to have women in decision-making roles. So top 6 in your parliament, top 3 in your parliament. Let's have a secretary general of a political party that is a woman. Let's have a president woman. Let's have a woman that is the head of environmental affairs. Let's have a woman that's ahead of foreign affairs to make key decisions that will impact women and that will also speak to the equity element and that will then bring equality in the fore. So those are some of the most important things and some of the most key sort of movements that we've seen come up. So in the South African context was the total shutdown against gender-based violence in South Africa, which led to 24 nationwide demands that were submitted to the president and subsequently led to the first presidential summit on gender-based violence in the country. Again, there's more work that's being done by End Femicide Kenya movement, which consists of 24 Kenyan country chapters, over 1,000 organizations and individuals nationally demanding for swift and effective action from the Kenyan government. And these are the types of movements that deal with the issues that women face so that they can be capacitated to be in leadership roles, and therefore we can have an equal representation in political parties and international institutions. I mean, the activists of the Infemicide Kenya movement basically pushed quite a lot, and on the 27th, of January 2024, nationwide protests of over 20,000 people hit the streets demanding for the end of femicide. And that type of movement is a strong movement, and I think we saw it globally, online and in international and national and regional news. And these are the types of movements that also push to propel women to feel heard and therefore give them agency enough to be in these international and global and political sort of leadership roles. Judicial achievements have also been had over the years. And while I'm highlighting the good, I hope that we are also cognizant of the parts that still need to be tweaked. Some good judicial achievements was the landmark court cases. Numerous court rulings have been pushed to advance gender rights. For example, in 2015 in the US, the Supreme Court ruling of the Obergefell versus Hodges legalized same-sex marriages, reinforcing the rights of LGBTQI plus individuals, promoting broader notions of gender equality and equity. And these are important because in partnership with women's struggles, we need to also recognize marginalized communities, marginalized persons, which the LGBTQI plus are still part of that. Because if we're going to create equity, we need to create equity and equality for all. Some global developments are the Sustainable Development Goals, which I think we all quote. Goal number 5, which aims to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls by 2030. We have about 6 years left of that. And I have noted a lot of institutions and political parties kind of panicking and taking stock of how far we are. Public awareness campaigns have been very crucial, and some to note that have really tried to raise public awareness, but also have pushed to educate women and capacitate women into leadership. Platforms are different organizations and different training programs like Future Elect that actually train women who want to be in Congress, who want to be in National Assembly, how to navigate those spaces, how to policy make, how to be involved in policy making. And I think this is just to say that there has been work that has been done in this paradigm. There's been a lot of work that has tried to address issues, but it is absolutely important for us to have mandatory policy mechanisms. It is important for us to understand the paradigm of putting gender equality in the forefront as an intersectional perspective of human rights, and not just one person, but each woman and each aspect of an organization exists in many different intersections. And these intersections need to come together and speak to gender equality. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lazo. You have shared quite so much. And when you mentioned the total shutdown, I was part of that campaign. I felt a great sense of pride to, know that sometimes we're struggling in making sure in taking up the space, and we're not even sure if things are going to happen. But in your starting point, you mentioned that there's an increased recognition of women, and I'm happy. In Setswana, we say meaning that the sun is shining bright towards us, and noting that we still have a lot of deep structure and organizational structure to culture to deal with and unpack, and ensure that we're not incorporating a one size fits all or a blanket approach to these issues. I know here in Botswana as well, in terms of the National Assembly, we have less than 5% of women representation. We still have a long way to go for a population that has more women than men. That is quite alarming. And I'm big for also the money. We need that equal pay. We're putting in twice as much work, if not, 3 times more. And there's also another saying that you always know where a woman's money is going. It's always going to her family, to feed her kids and to take care of the family, because we're the caretakers. Thank you very much, Lazo. We'll be moving over to our next speaker, Clariss, who will be sharing an overview of her experience in project management related to environmental security and conflict management, the importance of integrating gender equality and social inclusion into these projects using her specific examples from her work, highlighting key strategies for navigating the complexities of social and environmental challenges while maintaining a focus on inclusivity. The floor is yours, Clariss. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Thato. I've been working around this topic, thinking of how best I can present it. And it's quite a very broad topic. And I must say, like, environmental security, I think encompasses a lot of aspects of especially to do with climate justice, natural resource governance, the just energy transition, food resilience. It goes on and on and on. Environmental security is embedded within all those aspects. And if those areas are not adequately and properly addressed, it may lead to conflicts, community level conflicts, household level conflicts, and even broader conflicts within countries and stuff, as we all know that we also have issues to do with in the Fulani tribes, like migration issues with the nomad farmers and communities fighting for resources there. It's a whole lot. So I'll just start by introducing like the organization that I've been working with for it's 3 years, Green Governance Trust in Zimbabwe. And we work at the intersection of climate justice. We ensuring implementing resilient livelihood projects, natural resource governance, and the just energy transition. And in our work, we work with communities mostly in Zimbabwe. We work with communities in Zimbabwe, and not only communities. We also work with duty bearers, policymakers, government institutions to just ensure that the quest for climate justice and environmental security is propelled, and that legal frameworks and policies and all that are aligned to the basic human rights of communities. So in our work, we seek to ensure that communities are sustainably developed. And we've grown to understand that advocacy is more than just bringing information and raising awareness to communities about issues that are emanating in relation to climate change, in relation to environmental protection. But we also understand that it's also about ensuring that communities are resilient, communities have their livelihood sustained. So in our advocacy-based approach, we also bring in practical projects, initiatives like for livelihood improvements, like teaching skills, practical skills in agroecology, practical skills in developing crafts, practical skills in ensuring that community gardens are well kept and stuff. And we also, in our quest to working with women, we also realize that women have this desire, are mostly interested in projects that promote sustainability and resilience for their families. So the more you bring practical interventions, the more they are interested in learning and listening to what you have to say about climate change, about climate governance and stuff. And we've realized that even though we say we are bringing knowledge and information to communities, the communities are also giving us knowledge and information that could be useful towards our advocacy work or communicating with duty bearers, because we now have that integration and coherence between us and the communities. So we also conscientize communities about why it is important to protect the environment, because in as much as communities are knowledgeable about the changes and trends in the environment and how it has impacted them, they sometimes have adopted negative coping mechanisms like continuously cutting trees, child marriages, dropping girl children out of school and stuff. So we also say this is not a proper coping mechanism. I think if you can adopt this and that, and that this would work better. And we realize that as an organization, we can't be the only ones going out there to talk to duty bearers or talk to policymakers, but we also ensure that the communities, every community that we impact, every community that we work in, every community in which we're implementing our projects, we ensure that we empower with information, we promote, we boost their confidence to say, yes, you can go to this duty bearer and ask them for accountability, ask them when this road is going to be improved, when are we going to have better healthcare for our families, when is this, we teach them that, do you know that there's this policy that is existing within your communities that speaks to A, B, C, D, and that policy can help you improve such an area. And in that way, communities are able to say, we know our policies, we know what is written within the policy and legal institutions and frameworks, we know what is written within the constitution, and we are holding our duty bearers to account, and we want this for our environment. We want the exploration of minerals to be cognizant of our environment. We want climate change policies to be gender sensitive. We want like, there are a lot of things that we do from the top of our head. And you also asked me to like just speak on why it is important to integrate gender in the implementation of the projects and the programs that we are implementing. So from my experience, we've recognized that integrating gender is very important because it ensures sustainable and fair interventions. For example, in a community or in a community, women and men or people with disabilities, sex workers, married women, unmarried women, they all have I'm sorry for that, they have different needs in terms of what they would want to be addressed in terms of their lives and their communities and stuff. So integrating gender equality within the projects that we implement ensures that no one is left behind, and it ensures that we also understand the power dynamics in the communities. So in communities, there are some power dynamics that are always at play. There are power dynamics that are always at play when implementing community projects. So, for example, like we understand that sometimes in a community, especially rural communities, the male withhold more power than the females. And so when we come to a community and say we are implementing a project that seeks to empower women, empower women with skills and stuff, we have to ensure that we also seamlessly integrate the men so that they have an understanding of how this project is supposed to benefit them holistically as a community, and why it is important to ensure that women are equipped with skills. We don't have that attacking approach because in communities, if you go there with that, yes, we are radical in our approach. Yes, we are radical in understanding feminist principles and stuff and what. But we also have to be cognizant of the communities that we are going in. And we also have to be cognizant to ensure that in everything that we are doing, we are fostering peace, not exacerbating or worsening conflicts within the communities. So our approach is to ensure that we inform rather than misinform and leave that room for misinterpretation with groups withholding power. And you can also understand that the dynamics can also be different within urban settings and rural settings. And in urban settings, we find there are more empowered individuals in terms of men, more empowered men, more empowered women who may have an understanding of why it is important to have girls or women participating in these resilient livelihood projects. For instance, right now in the urban settings, we are implementing a food resilience project in Mutare, which is which is the primary city in Zimbabwe. And you find that there is very little misinterpretation on why we may need the participation of women, we may need the participation of youth. There's an understanding of the food dynamics within the city and why it's important to ensure that young people are involved in eating healthier and stuff. And this has allowed us to have maybe, what can I say? Can I say peaceful? Or it's not peaceful, but a better dynamics and better dynamics in terms and better communication, because there's a common understanding of these gender dynamics. Of course, we have reached hiccups in terms of implementing communities, because it's not like more urban settings are the standard for for conscientization. Urban settings are not the standard for what can I say, for awareness. There are some gaps and loopholes within urban communities, but it is better in comparison to rural communities. And then you wanted us also to talk about how creative approaches can enhance project outcomes. There's a lot. And in our approach as well as an institution, we incorporate creative approaches in how we implement the projects that we are implementing. For example, sometime last year, we were implementing a legislative theater project in a rural community. And that legislative theater, we would go to a community and we would say, so will you have a biodiversity and watershed management policy within your community? And we tell them this is what this policy says, and it speaks to your community specifically. And we tell them, we help them identify the gaps within the policy and help them just like try to improve the policy. And after that, we say, act it out. We create a platform where we bring in the duty bearers and the policy makers within that specific community. And we say the community ABCD wants to act out this policy and also wants to act out what they feel are the gaps within that policy. And you'll find that it is a light-hearted moment in which also the duty bearers will be like, oh, we may have overlooked this, we may have done this. And I think we understand where they are coming from by using theater, and that was by using theater. And also in most of the activities that we also implement at institutional level, we ensure that there is that component of art, music, and theater to just act out that is specific within that community and cultural context. And you may find that when a community resonates with the cultural context and everything, they are free to express themselves and also free to talk about issues that they may not be able to talk about if they are in a very serious situations. And sometimes you may act out a play on GBV in a comic way. We understand GBV is a very serious issue, but we may act it out in a very comic way, and you may find there's no longer tension among the males and females within the platform that we are trying to reach out to. And there's that openness on men sharing their perspective on GBV and women sharing their perspectives on GBV, and also how it intersects with issues to do with climate change, climate justice, natural resource governance, all those issues that I've highlighted initially. So we are not just only a community, an organization that is implementing community projects, but we also strive to create networks and connections across the continent and across the region as a way also of linking and learning, exchanging knowledge, and trying to understand how we can integrate some of the approaches that are being implemented in other communities within our own context and within our own setting as an institutions. And we find that linking and learning plays a very crucial role in also understanding gender dynamics, gender mainstreaming, and how it can be developed and expanded in terms of developing our own organizational principles and our own way of implementing things. And we also create a various literature around the topical issues, emerging issues that are going on within the communities. And literature we found to be very important, like documenting issues that are going on, and also not only documenting in yes, we've documented things in in academic form to ensure that it communicates, it reaches across those who are learned, those who are policy makers. But we also try to diffuse it to to make it more palatable to young people who are not as learned as maybe policymakers and people who are in various spaces of influencing policy. And we have done comic books, we've done newsletters, we've done animations, we've done mini documentaries just to ensure that whatever we are communicating at national level is also being communicated at community level. And we understand that there's supposed to be a synchronization between the national level understanding and community level understanding of the emerging issues and how they can be improved and how they can be developed in ensuring sustainability and ensuring that future policies to do with disaster management, policies to do with natural resource governance, policies to do with energy transition, speak to basic human rights and recognize women, youth, men, and all. And we are saying, you were talking about the quota system, and we're also saying that is gender mainstreaming enough? Is there more that can be done? And we're trying to create that system in which we're saying we don't want tokenism, but we want real recognition and real understanding. Those who understand things in layman's terms can also be able to contribute meaningfully to national issues of national governance, climate governance, and all that also when they are at platforms, understanding what is already happening at national platforms. So I think I can go on and on and on. I think I'll just end here at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Clariss. I think I love how, you know, gender sensitive, it's even a tongue twister, gender sensitive approaches is more or less like, you know, we getting to understand each and every individual and their capacity and not putting people into different boxes and even perpetuating inequalities and the gaps that are already existing. You are doing amazing work, and I hope, as you had shared, that there are networks and connections you're building across the region. I hope it's not just the Southern Africa region, so that Joy can also join in and also share in their experiences and insights and see how we can share the knowledge that we all have and incapacitate, and in order to promote, you know, resilience and sustainability, like you had shared with the communities, in as much as you train them and do capacity building sessions, they in exchange share the indigenous knowledge. And as we are wrapping up, ladies, moving on to now, we know that we're moving into a space of a just transition. How do we ensure that we, and in as much as we are developing, we are conserving the land and ensuring that we continue to maintain that balance within that gender lens. Over to you, Joy.
Okay, you can hear me? Just 1 minute. So thank you so much for all the presenters that have presented. I am so glad to be part of this conversation and also be part of the powerful women that have presented their work and their opinions on how to continue the conversation about gender equality and how we can achieve it. And I think even the conversations about a just transition means transitioning from fossil fuels to renewable energy, but in a just way that that considers everybody and that it leaves no one behind. I think it's really important that we when we are moving to a just transition, to make sure that actually no one lives behind, no one is left behind, especially countries like the global South, such as Kenya, and such as countries such as Congo, who are the country that is producing the mineral that is needed for a just transition, but you realize that these people are actually the ones affected. So when we talk about a just transition, we need to take into account everybody's views, and making sure that when we move to a just transition, that everybody's ideas and everybody's knowledge is incorporated in it. Because but also considering how we are going to treat the environment, because even if we say that we are now focusing on renewable energy, but if we focus also on renewable energy and we do not consider, is it when we move, is it harmful to the environment, is it going to be beneficial? We could also be doing something good, but also damaging the environment as well. So I think everything should be considered and everything should be done in a just way in order for us to shift to a much more to move to a better environment, to move to a better world, but also making sure that everybody benefits and it is done in a just way, and that we are not destroying the very ecosystem that gives us life. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Joy. Over to you, Lazo.
Thank you so much. Brilliant presentation, absolutely powerful stuff, Clarissa. I really enjoyed listening to the work that you've done. I think with regard to the just transition, firstly, we need to really consolidate our definition of just transition, because currently it's very limited. And I think that, again, that is because of the representation issues that we have. It's not representative of the demographics of who we are as a human race in general. There are mainly men than women. It is very also coming from a very patriarchal sort of theoretical framework. And it's important to root the just transition in a more intersectional perspective that puts the people that are most affected in the front. It puts the people that are most affected by the lack of environmental protection, by the lack of sustainable development, by fake claims of sustainable development at the front. These people need to be the people that are also engaged. And I think that the just transition cannot just come from a theoretical perspective. We need to go deeper than statistics and research. We need to speak to people. We need the people that are planting, the people that are farming, the people that are working in different perspectives. We need to talk about them. We need to engage the youth, because the youth have got a lot of solutions, solar panels. There's a lot of invention that's happening. And I think in the just transition, we need to be careful to just set numbers. And the way that I believe that we can root gender equality is not just including women, but capacitating women. And listening to women, because we talk about capacity building quite a lot when it comes to women, and you find that we may talk about it in terms of sustainable development, but when we go back home, for instance, I'm from a predominantly rural province in South Africa. When we go back home, it's not called sustainable development. It's literally called just being responsible. It's not called recycling. It's called picking up after yourself, right? So I think another aspect of the just transition is listening to women and girls, listening to the people. Like I said before, 1 in every 4 households in Africa is headed by women. Let's take these women and listen to them and hear what they have to say. Thanks.
Wow. Yes. So we have been living all these trendy words this whole time. Over to you, Clariss.
All right. Thank you so much, Thato. So, when we speak, and thank you everyone for the presentation. For the presentations, they were very insightful, and I feel very informed and equipped at the moment. But I just want to say, like, when we talk about the just energy transition, who is it just to, and does it recognize the human rights of communities? So let me say, as an institution, we recently produced a book. It speaks to Zimbabwe, but I feel that it can also resonate to all of you in this space. and I will share the link after this meeting. And it's a book titled The Just Energy Transition in Zimbabwe, Socio-Economic and Environmental Perspectives. It has all those dynamics of how it looks like, how the energy transition should look like in terms of Zimbabwe. And it also touches about on other communities within the African continent, to just speak from example and setting the tone on how the just energy transition should be like. But at the bottom line of everything is that energy transition should recognize the human rights, and we should understand whether it's, when we say just, is it just to government, is it just to communities, is it just to the powers that be? I do not want to mention their name, but who is it just to, the energy transition? So it's a very broad topic of discussion that is really important today, and it maps and it shapes the future, even when it comes to food systems, even if it comes to mineral resource governance and all that. So that's all I can leave today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much to our wonderful speakers. I think we need to go benchmarking in all these countries and, do mandatory approaches to dismantle power dynamics and informing and uprooting misinformation. In our closing, I'll pass on to Jana, who will wrap up for us as we'll be closing out the session. Over to you, Jana.
Well, thank you, Thato. And before we close here, I want to thank you for bringing in such wonderful guests. You're all so eloquent and articulate. You have important messages, and I thank you, and We the World thanks you. So thank you so much for what you're all doing in the world. It's really been amazing. And I thank all of you for watching this and for being a part of the 20th anniversary of 11 Days of Global Unity. Please go to we.net to get involved and even make a contribution if you want. We will thank you. So goodbye from all of us at We the World, and let us go from a me society to a we society. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.